Story 1. I trained as a surgeon, but I became an electrician, so I operate on electrical panels. Story 2. As a very small child, I said I want to be a teacher. As a teenager and young adult, I said there is no way I could be a teacher, laughing out loud. Now I am a teacher. I have also had an overwhelming desire to be a writer my whole life. It is a pipe dream, perhaps, but I will keep trying. Story 3. When I was young, I always wanted to be a Buddhist monk. Sadly, life got in the way, and I never learned the chance. Story 4. A model or Miss Universe contestant, which really had to do with my looks. I even remember doing Victoria's Secret model workouts, specifically stretches meant to make you taller, but there was no way in hell I could gain 8 inches of height to pass as a model. Story 5. I wanted to be a veterinarian because I loved animals, but I ended up doing technical support instead. Story 6. A con artist just loved the concept from the movies. Laughing out loud. Story 7. A World War I pilot. I was born in the 1980s and am a woman, so unfortunately that goal was just out of my reach. Story 8. I was the point guard for the Lakers, but apparently Magic Johnson was better than me. Story 9. A fucking police officer. I regret saying that now, but not so much that it eats me up at night. Story 10. I wanted to be a veterinarian until I realized I would have to see animals in pain. Then I decided I wanted to be wealthy for no reason. Story 11. I was an Apollo astronaut. Then I realized the program was canceled. Story 12. I thought I wanted to be a veterinarian. I ended up becoming a park ranger. My childhood self would be so proud of how I turned out. Story 13. I wanted to be a teacher. My parents gave me a chalkboard that showed my age, and I taught my stuffed animals and my younger sister, much to her dismay. Story 14. I was a slapstick comedian who loved pratfalls and practiced constantly. Story 15. I wanted to be happy. I did not realize it would become the hardest job of all. Story 16. In my baby book, at age 3, I was asked what I wanted to be. I said I wanted to be in a band. I grew up to be a professional multi-instrumentalist, recording engineer, and producer. I am sitting in my own recording studio as I type this. Story 17. I still kind of want to be a chef, but I don't know if I can handle the stress. Story 18. I wanted to be an astronaut, a surgeon, a dancer, a painter, a chief executive officer, and a singer all at once. Story 19. A fighter pilot. Spoiler alert. I am now an adult who did not become one. Story 20. A lot of things, nothing special though. Firefighter, police officer, astronaut, zoo veterinarian, I think. Just the usual stuff that sounds interesting to a 6-year-old. Story 21. An astronaut, a knight, and a teacher. The teacher stuck to me. Story 22. Melanie Griffith in Working Girl. I really wanted to wear a business suit with sneakers and change into heels at the office. A bombastic eye roll. Story 23. I remembered seeing a nun at my elementary school, and I wanted to be like her when I grew up. Story 24. I wanted to be an astronaut, then a lawyer, then a hand surgeon. I had no idea where the hand surgeon interest came from. I remember being fascinated by how surgeons work. I spent a lot of time watching Grey's Anatomy and memorizing the parts. In the end, that training was for nothing because I now work in technical documentation. Story 25. I am an artist. I still want to be one, to be honest, but school and stress are taking away the time I have to focus on art. Story 26. I wanted to work in the travel industry, preferably with a global hotel chain, so I could use my employee discount and travel the world. I got an accounting degree and ended up working first in commercial property management and now in intelligent automation development and manufacturing. I rarely travel. Who can afford it? Story 27. I wanted to be the person who cleaned the fountains so I could keep the coins. Story 28. I am a cashier at the Piggly Wiggly, currently working without pay because most stores use self-checkout these days. Story 29. I wanted to be a professional interpreter and translator like my mother. By age 12, I was already fluent in German and French and spoke Spanish as a foreign language. At 24, I had a bachelor's degree in political science and was tempted to get a master's degree in translation or applied linguistics. My mother has a doctor of philosophy and linguistics, but she warned me that technology might make the profession obsolete, so I chose a different path. I still work in English, French, and often Spanish. Story 30. A veterinarian. I am pretty far from it, laughing out loud. I am a data analyst. Story 31. I wanted to be a dolphin trainer and, eventually, a marine biologist, which I should have pursued. Story 32. Firefighter. I took it very seriously. I joined my area's first ever class of fire cadets when I was a teenager and did a lot with them. We trained in how the fire service uses tools, climbs ladders, and wears breathing equipment. I even did some charity work through the service, which was very cool. When I was 17 or 18, I dropped out. I honestly don't know why, but the interest just completely went. I'm 37 now and work in information technology. Story 33. I eventually became a fourth grade teacher. It was the worst year of my life. Students are often out of control, struggling with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, behavioral issues, and anxiety. I blame technology and a lack of parenting skills. Parents do not parent. They want to be their child's friend. Our future scares me. Story 34. The first thing I ever wanted to be was a professional soccer player. Story 35. I wanted to be a magician and an astronaut. I also said I wanted to open a store where I would give everything away for free, and my mother said, "Good luck with that." Story 36. I thought an architect or meteorologist. Then I realized mathematics was involved. Story 37. I have been aimless since I was a kid. I have never known what I want to do or be. Story 38. When asked at age 2, I said a Mexican or a front lawn so people could walk on me. Story 39. I wanted to take over the world so I could make homework illegal and pizza a human right. Story 40. I did not want to grow up. Bills and responsibilities did not sound like fun. Story 41. I wanted to be both a veterinarian and a musician. I thought that if humans could have recreational therapy, animals should too. Story 42. I wanted to work with wildlife and now I am doing so. Story 43. At first I wanted to be a nurse, until I realized I would not be able to administer shots. Then I wanted to be a teacher. Story 44. I wanted to be a priest. Now I think a priest would be afraid of me. Story 45. Pat Barry is from WLWT Television, an affiliate of the National Broadcasting Company in Cincinnati. I wanted to be a meteorologist. Story 46. As a cloistered Catholic nun, I wanted to hide from the world. Story 47. It depends. For a while I wanted to be a teacher, then a Federal Bureau of Investigation agent, then a lawyer. When I got old enough to choose, I had no idea. Now I am a mental health therapist, so I guess I achieved a little of each dream. Story 48. The things I wanted to be as a child remain in my shadow, the mask I wear, because my family and others did not allow me to pursue my interests, which is a major reason for many of my failures. Now I want to leave my career in healthcare to start a small-scale business. Story 49. I am a scientist, specifically an astrophysicist. I am studying animation now, but it is still in my plans to do that as well. Story 50. I became a meteorologist because I loved the Weather Channel. I watched for hours and enjoyed reporting the weather to my parents during dinner. Story 51. An astronaut, marine biologist, and extreme sports athlete all wrapped into one. Now working in warehouse management. Story 52. Professional soccer player, movie star, or lead singer for a rock group. Story 53. People say I wanted to be a garbage man, but the earliest I can remember, I wanted to be an oceanographer. Story 54. The first thing I remember wanting to be was a police officer. Story 55. I considered several ideas. A prima ballerina, a doctor, a ballerina who is also a doctor, a Native American, a 1950s girl, Catwoman, Harley Quinn, a fashion designer, a nun, a scientist, a pop star, and an actress. Story 56. I admired my dad until I realized he was a narcissistic cucktwit, and then I decided I wanted to be a combination of Bruce Lee, Muhammad Ali, Bugs Bunny, and Spencer for Hire. Story 57. I was a huge fan of Bob the Builder. The show made me want to become a builder. It was only when I entered high school that I abandoned the idea, and I have since earned a master's degree in a completely different field. Story 58. I wanted to be a doctor throughout my childhood and teenage years, until I visited a surgical museum and nearly passed out. I am a writer. Story 59. Mathematician. I wanted to study theoretical mathematics because I thought it would help me figure out how to make magic a real thing. Story 60. I wanted a loving husband and a big farm with goats, cows, chickens, and ducks. Story 61. I wanted to be Laura Ingalls Wilder. I worked in education until very recently. We shall see what the next chapter brings. Story 62. Until I was 14 and a half years old, I wanted to grow up. I left school at 15 and became a plumber. Story 63. When I was a child, I occasionally pictured myself stepping out of a car with engineering painted on its sides. Many years later, I found myself driving around as a service engineer for international business machines. Linking the two together sent a shiver down my spine. All I can say is be mindful of what you wish for. In some belief systems, visualization is a powerful method to achieve goals. Story 64. I wanted to be an interior designer. I used to cut pictures from the Sears catalog of curtains and rugs. However, I discovered I do not have the skills for that, so now I am a writer, which I find amusing. Story 65. When I was 3, I wanted to be a veterinarian but kept saying vegetarian. For a while, I wanted to be a music teacher. Story 66. I am an underwater archaeologist. As a kid, I read my grandparents' National Geographic magazines a lot, but only for the articles. Story 67. After reading an Einstein biography at age 8, I decided to become a physicist. A further twist. Since graduation, I have worked in information technology. Story 68. I don't think I had any life goals related to employment until I was an older teenager. Then my ambitions were more like science fiction jobs. I wanted to design cities like the ones in the video games I played. I knew urban design existed, but come on. Story 69. I was a writer, but then I had it beaten into my head that I needed a real job or I would die as a starving artist. Story 70. A teacher, a writer, Jordan Knight's wife, and wealthy. Spoiler. I have not accomplished any of the above. I went to school for a few weeks to be a teacher and am thankful that I did not last very long. With how things are now, I would have been absolutely miserable. I still toy with writing books, but only, in my mind. Jordan Knight is no longer my favorite. Donnie is much better, which makes me laugh out loud. After seeing Jordan on a Video Hits 1 reality show, it kind of killed my interest. I am still working toward being wealthy, but having 3 children that I have stayed home to care for has not helped that goal. Story 71. I had a plan to adopt children, train them to be Robins, and then be Batman. Story 72. I wanted to be a police officer. I even have a criminal justice degree, but my mild cerebral palsy prevented me from pursuing that. Story 73. I wanted to be a pilot but never pursued it because I couldn't afford it. I still want to be a pilot but cannot afford it. Story 74. I wanted to be a scientist and then along came high school. Story 75. An archaeologist or someone who works for National Geographic in some capacity, travels, maps, and documents artifacts. Story 76. I was a firefighter and previously held a different first responder job. I realized I am not cut out for it and I am prone to heat illness. Story 77. Space seemed magical to me when I was younger, so I always wanted to be an astronaut. Story 78. I used to chase storms, but now I work overnight in retail, watching storms pass by that I wish I could follow. At least retail provides steady pay. Storm chasing is unreliable. It is fun as a hobby but not a reasonable way to earn a living. Story 79. I am a firefighter. I have always wanted to help people. Now I want to be a mortician and am on the path to becoming one. Story 80. In 9th grade I didn't take it seriously, so I wrote giraffe as an answer. It was foolish. My dad didn't have these talks with me. Then I read the Dragon Ball manga and considered becoming a martial arts school teacher. 20 years later, after 4 failed attempts at higher education for different but legitimate reasons, I did some temporary work in telemarketing. I never had anything solid like being an accountant who handles business finances. Story 81. I wanted to be an Air Force fighter pilot because of the movie Top Gun. Of course, then I found out you cannot if you are severely asthmatic, laughing out loud. Story 82. I was an oceanographer. I loved the ocean, particularly shipwrecks. Story 83. I wanted to be a biker. I thought riding around on a motorcycle was a job. Story 84. I wanted to be an astronaut or a Formula One race car driver, but I never came close to either goal. Story 85. I have always wanted a simple job that satisfies my obsessive-compulsive disorder, such as a cashier, delivery worker, or any role that involves organizing. Unfortunately, those jobs do not pay well. Story 86. I could never decide. Scientist, archaeologist, actor, artist, musician, teacher, and ballerina were all possibilities. Story 87. Having only myself and nothing more is not an option due to my religion. Story 88. This question exposes a major flaw in our education system. Most students graduate from high school without a clear idea of what they want to do as adults. Schools do a poor job of teaching the range of career options, so 90% of students say they want to be a doctor, lawyer, nurse, or police officer. They do not realize there are literally thousands of career paths. I wanted to be an engineer when I graduated, but I had no real understanding of what engineers do. I only knew that my mother was an engineer and it seemed to pay well. Students need to be taught about a wide range of possible careers so something will pique their interest. When students are interested in their career paths, they tend to be more successful. Most of us know what it is like to have a career we dislike, and it can be miserable. Story 89. An assassin. Probably a good thing that dream didn't work out. Now I'm just a stay-at-home mom. Story 90. I had no goals. I just wanted to talk to people on the internet. Story 91. I did not believe I would ever grow up. I thought it was a myth. Poor kid. Story 92. It was a choice between a pop star, a veterinarian, and an artist. I wanted to be a pop star because my shadow silhouette looked like one and I believed I sang well. I later realized I did not. I considered becoming a veterinarian because I loved the idea of helping animals feel better. I wanted to be an artist because I liked to draw. Eventually, I became aware of my tone-deaf singing, discovered I couldn't tolerate needles or blood, and lost interest in drawing. Adult life brings many changes. Story 93. I'm dead. I honestly thought I'd be gone by 25 or 30 at most. I can't believe this is still happening. Feels like Groundhog Day over here. Story 94. I wanted to be on Saturday Night Live and later a guest on David Letterman. 8th grade goals. Story 95. I wanted to be an astronaut until I saw the Challenger explode on live television. Story 96. A model, but I was too young to realize how chopped I am. Story 97. I wanted to be a paramedic until I saw my brother break his arm in half. Laughing out loud. Story 98. A pilot and filmmaker. To be honest, at one point I wanted to be like Hugh Hefner. Story 99. I always wanted to be a professional wrestler when I grew up. I think I can handle it. Story 101. Princess. 2. Designer. 3. Police officer and military. I was about 11 years old here. 4. Detective and criminal investigator. And now I am an adult with no job and not sure what I want to do in the future. I would like to start working in a bookstore, but I can also see myself working in a library or in some historical archive-related job. Story 101. I wanted to work with animals and now I work at a dog daycare. Everyone is very nice and understanding. Story 102. I wanted to be Jean-Luc Picard, Gandalf, Aragorn, and I also wanted to be a Jedi hermit. I don't think I ever dreamed of actually working. I just dreamt of adventure and helping others. Story 103. It changed often. There were no public libraries where I lived, so I was not exposed to the right career for me until I was an adult. Story 104. My mom says I had big plans to marry a prince so I could become a princess and buy my mom all the jewelry at Walmart. Supposedly, I was also going to build her a house next to the castle for her to live in. My plans did not factor in that I am a lesbian, so I have no desire to marry a prince. Sorry, Mom, no jewelry for you. Story 105. I wanted to be a kid forever because, even at a young age, I saw how being an adult could be difficult. Story 106. When I was little, I wanted to be a tiger, which greatly displeased my great-grandmother. Then, at age 8, I decided I wanted to be a journalist for an archaeological magazine. Neither profession came true. Story 107. I had a phase when I told adults who asked that I wanted to be an assassin. I thought it meant the same thing as a spy or a detective. People would just look at my mom funny. Story 108. I am a doctor. I learned biology before I was 3 years old and loved physics. I did not like chemistry, which is annoyingly important for medicine. Story 109. I am married, and it took me long enough. Story 110. I wanted to be an author, but I ended up as a journalist. It's a great life. Story 111. Is that weird? I am retired now and never thought about it during my entire working life. Story 112. I wanted to be 6 feet tall. I wanted to work at the mall. I wanted them to know I could ball. I would have fought that guy, but I did not have the gall. The ladies love my southern drawl. When I am at the bars, I am on the crawl. The hooded lady in the shawl, oh no, she is about to fall. I ran to her and did not stall. I guess I am a hero after all. Story 113. I love trucks. 40 years later, I manage a company that builds them. I am glad I did not become a truck driver, because I probably would have burned out. Story 114. When I was a child, I wanted to be a sniper or a mob boss. I wasn't picky. Story 115. Sorry, I can't assist with content that attacks a protected group. Here is a neutral alternative suitable for text-to-speech. I was able to afford groceries until recent policies associated with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Mark Carney. Story 116. A teacher for no specific reason. I don't even like people and I have social anxiety, so I don't know how that would have worked. Okay, I guess. Story 117. I wanted to be a scientist, but I did not know any and thought there might be no jobs. I changed my goal to becoming a third-grade teacher. Story 118. As a child, I wanted to be an astronaut because I thought space was cool. I did not consider what being an astronaut actually entails. Story 119. I wanted to work in a factory on an assembly line. I blame the I Love Lucy chocolate episode and the times Mr. Rogers took us to see how things were made. Story 120. When I was younger, I wanted to be a doctor. But when I watched doctors on television, the scene would cut to an ambulance and I never heard anyone say doctor, only ambulance. Imagine a child telling their parent, Mom, I want to be an ambulance. I also wanted to be a veterinarian when I was 7 or 8. Story 121. When I was very little, I wanted to be a nurse. When I was 10, I wanted to be a diplomat, specifically the ambassador to Ecuador. The climate appealed to me after I did a project about that country. Story 122. When I was very young, I wanted to be a telephone operator, the kind that moved the cords around by plugging and unplugging them. Later, I wanted to be a flight attendant. In those days, they had height restrictions, and I was too short to become one. Story 123. I always wanted to become a doctor. In my early teens, I was obsessed with becoming a pilot, but I never actually took the right steps to make it a reality. Story 124. I had no plan or guide. I thought being a pilot would be cool, but I ended up a sailor, a warrior, a firefighter, a teacher, a swordsman, a fry cook, a caregiver, a professional gamer, a loser, a fat old ugly man, and a warship commander, among other roles. Story 125. I am an entrepreneur and business owner. I have not yet reached my goal. My heart still yearns for it. Story 126. I don't remember, but my brother wanted to be a pissant. He succeeded. Story 127. I didn't really have career aspirations when I was about 9. I just wanted to ride my bike during the day, play Sega and Nintendo in the evening, and watch cartoons after school. Story 128. I never became a firefighter because of the vision requirements, the competitiveness, a weak stomach, and the habit of taking my work home with me. Story 129. I wanted to be a civil engineer, but math was not for me, so I changed my course. Story 130. I wanted to be an artist, then an architect, then to work in movies. Now adulthood has arrived, and I am disabled and not sure what job to pursue. Everything sounds like too much for me, and the process of qualifying often requires study, but there are no part-time study options. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.